Find our book, Finances the Other F Word, Another F Word to Love, on Amazon now.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, as wonderful an attorney as I am, and as good as Stormy is at whatever it is he does, please do note that anything said in our podcasts are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, Stormy Andrews, founder of Yokel Local Marketing, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finances the Other F Word, and this is the third part of our series of the economics of discrimination, and today we will be talking a little bit about the justice system. I am tired as balls right now. I've been sleeping like absolute crap and been having massive technical issues. Stormy, on the other hand, is super hyped for some reason, and Zoe...
That's because I got the ball spray.
You got the ball spray?
You said you're tired as balls?
Yes.
I got the rejuvenation spray. Oh, come on.
How is that?
Funny.
Is there...
Come on with me. That had to be funny.
Wait, is there a ball rejuvenate? Wait, I really need to know. Is there a ball rejuvenation spray?
Oh, there's a whole market now there about your ball care. So now they have like ball clippers, ball antiperspirant, ball rejuvenation
ball wipes.
spray.
Yeah,
they got everything now.
Dude, they have a butt scrub. They have like an actual, it's a proctologist who made, I was sitting in Home Depot waiting to talk to the flooring people, and an article came up, and I was like, this is not real. And I looked, and he's a proctologist, and he made this very specific type of stuff, and he was going through why it was superior and how it had little crystals that would scrub delicately, but scrub the inner folds. You guys should see Zoe's face. She's so disgusted right now. The inner folds of
your bottom.
Anus.
Just wipe your bums and move on.
But, sometimes, it's exfoliating that area is not a bad thing.
I don't need to exfoliate my area. Thank you very much.
Apparently it's called Vet Booty, though. I'm looking at it.
What is it called?
Online. Vet Booty, though. THO, Vet Booty, though.
No, this is a real doctor. This is a real doctor.
Booty Duo. Booty.
That's a booty
and
doctor.
Boobies. There's a booty and boobies bundle. And have you seen my underwear and the booty trio? So
what do they do for your boobies?
I don't know. It's like exfoliate.
Exfoliate?
Yeah, whatever it is.
Exfoliate. Excoliosis. Oh my God, I got excoliosis in my bones.
Hey.
That's sexy.
We went off the rails on this one quick, didn't we?
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
It's perfect.
Yeah, no, that is some weird booties. No, this is an actual proctologist who has a butt scrub to specifically clean and disinfect that area and help dry it out from butt sweat, apparently. It was a whole thing. It was like $28 to $50. I can't remember how much it was. I was like, holy shit. Literally. I was like,
you can find a link to that on this episode.
Right. I'll try to find it. It's a doctor.
Mel will leave some reviews for you.
Right, exactly.
Is it the same doctor who says you can get pregnant by having sex with demons?
No, but that would
She's a doctor. She's a doctor.
Is she a real doctor? I heard that.
Since last year. She got a license last year. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's from, and what did she say was from having sex with demons and demon sperm?
She said they come into you while you're sleeping and impregnate you or something like that.
Impregnate you?
I think they can impregnate you. I don't know. Maybe.
No, they make you sick, don't they?
I was going to say, I thought they made you sick.
They make you sick.
Well, I don't know. To me, pregnancy is sick.
While you're
so,
sleeping. Something like that. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, obviously they're pretty bad at it if they're doing it, or maybe I'm just not their type. Because I've yet to be woken up by having sex with the demon, and I'm a little put off by that. I got to be honest with you. What the fuck is wrong with me? I know. What the fuck is wrong with me? I got to ask for a white girl. Right. I got to ask for a white girl. Fuck you, demons. You can suck a dick. Oh my goodness. So what are we doing? We're doing Economics and discrimination. We're talking. Yes. Always butts are always good conversations to have. How's your book doing, Stormy?
It's doing pretty darn awesome. I just wish Amazon would their bag. They keep going back ordered, and people are like, hey, why'd it take us so long to get the book? I don't know. So I don't know if that's Amazon, Ingram Spark, whoever, but they're selling them. And I've got a virtual event where I'm speaking to 300 to 1,000 people coming up later on this month. And I fully expect half the people to buy a book. They'll be crazy not to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. World's best buyer persona system. Look at that. Yeah. Woo. Okay. So as me being tired as balls right now, these nuts, we're going to get right into it. And I'm just letting you guys know there's a lot of fucking statistics in this. So I'm just going to have to get through them, and then we'll talk a little bit about a kind of a different approach to the economics and discrimination in regards to the judicial system. And then this will probably be a pretty short episode because your host is exhausted, and now she wants to go get some butt scrub and have a good soak in the tub. And do exfoliation on my boobs, apparently.
And don't forget the ball spray.
And I don't need ball spray, but you know. But now I'm curious. Now I'm gonna have to find. Because now I can picture like a guy like, you know how when they go out for the night they put on cologne, like a guy like, you know, sprucing up his balls and then like parting his hair on one side of his ball sack.
Hey, wait, listen. I'm not joking. I bought the ball spray and I got the ball deodorant and the clippers. I'm like solid. I'm like, this is pretty cool. They should have had this around in the 80s when I was growing my unibrow.
God, have you guys? I almost said something awful. Wow, I totally stopped myself from there. Yeah, the 80s, everybody was hairy. Okay. All right, that's odd that I censor myself. That was good catch, Mel. Good check.
Yeah, it was odd.
High five. I know. Yeah. High five, Mel.
You must be tired.
I know. Uh-huh. Oh my God. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this this one, talk about some statistics, and then we can turn around and talk about balls again, apparently. But so for those of you who are out there and are looking up stuff, I'll just I'm going to put all the links in the show notes like I always do as far as the resources. And if you're curious about actual statistics that aren't considered fake news, the good place to start is the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics, which is the BJS. BJS. You see what I did there?
I like it.
I know.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to call it BJs for short.
BJs. There you go. So BJs, and you can find them, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes, but their page is so boring. Just to even try to navigate any of their stuff. I mean, I don't know how you could make statistics more boring, but they really did it. So if you get hard on by numbers and you guys really want to dig into these numbers, start with the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics, or BJs. And then we have a couple different resources here. So let's just get into some really quick numbers. As of 2018, black males accounted for 34% of the total prison population, and white males 29%, and Hispanic males at 24%. Now, this is going to be very interesting, and we're going to come back to this. 74% of all people held in jails are not convicted of any crime, which I found fascinating. And for those of you who may remember, and I'm going to try to get it pulled up real quick here, when we did the episode on the profitability of prisons, we actually talked a little bit about this, about how the prison system works. I know that's kind of loud, but number 60, which was released on January 23rd of this year, we talked about the profitability of prison. So 74% of the people that are held in jails are not currently convicted of any crimes. And these are the most up-to-date statistics I could get. So this is going to be a lot of numbers, you guys, but we got to go through them. So as of April 2020, there was 1,291,000 people in state prisons. 191,000 of them were drug-related. 227,000 were property damage-related. 713,000 were considered violent. And then 150,000 were considered public orders. Now, in the local jails, you had 631,000 total completely. People, 161,000 of them had been convicted of a crime. 470,000 had not been convicted of anything and were sitting there awaiting trial or awaiting further information. In the federal prison and jails, there was a total of 226,000 people. The marshals controlled 60,000 of those, and there was, out of those, 166,000 were convicted. We had youth of 44,000 in there, and then we had territorial prisons, which would be like reservations of, Native American reservations of 11,000. Immigration detention, 42,000. Involuntary commitment, as far as like maybe in a mental health facility, 22,000. And between in the military, like 1,300. And so when we're looking at mass incarceration, a lot of it we're looking about are nonviolent drug crimes, and we're looking at misdemeanors and things of that nature, which are the primarily the people that actually occupy most of the prison sentence, the prison system. And a lot of them are either waiting and due to, and what was that documentary that we watched, Stormy? 13?
13.
Oh,
Yeah,
was it 13? Yeah.
13. Yeah.
13. So in that documentary, and it's on Netflix, and I encourage you to watch it, they really touch on the legislation that was passed by Bill Clinton under his administration on mandatory sentencing. And they really explored the justice system. And there's also another podcast, I believe it's called Criminal, where they did something specific like that. And it really explored as far as when people come into the prison system, if they get arrested for something, there's minimum sentencing requirements. And a lot of times the fear is that if they go through the trial and maybe they have a public defender that's overworked, or they don't have the money to get another defender, of maybe a higher caliber with less of a caseload or something like that, that they're going to actually be found guilty, and then they're mandatorily going to go to jail for like 5 to 10 to 15 years. And in the documentary, one of the things they touched on is how you have heroin and then you have crack. And heroin and crack, or was it cocaine? Cocaine. You have cocaine and crack. Cocaine had a minimum sentence of something very low, but then you had crack being a minimum sentence if they were found guilty of having possession or selling it of a much higher degree. And the documentary is pointing out in that specific scenario that when it came to the black community that got hit with a crack epidemic more so than high-end yuppies doing cocaine, that the mandatory sentencing was lighter. And Bill Clinton has since said, I think within the last year, that he regrets that it didn't work out the way it was supposed to, and it was a really bad thing. And so, well, a lot of the people that we have in jail, or we also have people who are on bench warrants, and that's where maybe they have missed a court case, a court date, and so they get picked up and then they get thrown in jail on a hold, and they have to sit there to make sure that when their court case comes up, they will go and they will be there. And so what we have is we have a lot of people getting picked up for stuff, and they can't make bail. And this is where kind of the economics of this really kind of plays out. So let me give you just a little bit more statistics, and let's actually move to the bail function of this, because this really gets down to the discrimination and ties all of the economics we've talked about in together. So black people today are still incarcerated at over 3 times the rate of white people in jails, and then more than 5 times the rate of white people in prisons. Okay. Now, but the good news, and this is information from this year, I believe it was April of 2020, and I have the link on the resources. The jail incarceration rate for black Americans is actually falling, while the white Americans is increasing. And they said from 2008 to 2018, the jail incarceration rate for white Americans has actually risen by 12% to 178 people per 100,000, and the black incarceration rate has actually fell 28% to 592 per 100,000 people, and the Hispanic incarceration rate has also fell by 34% to 182 people per 100,000. And what they're seeing is they're seeing that a lot of the more of the incarceration is actually happening in the rural areas, which tend to be more white. And that's one of the reasons why we're seeing that as far as overall the incarceration rate of blacks and Hispanics is going down, but they still predominantly make up most of the actual prison sentence. And so we do have a decline, which is really nice. So when we're looking at local jails, we're looking at, and this is all a rate per 100,000. So it's an amount of people per 100,000 people. So if you take a sampling of 100,000 people, so in this case, in the local jails, the blacks represent 592 people of those 100,000 people. Native Americans are 401 of 100,000, Hispanics 182 of 100,000, whites 187 per 100,000, and then other as 50. And then the state and federal prison, we see a significant amount, like the statistic just told us above. Blacks and prison, state and federal prison, are 1,398 per 100,000. Native Americans 984 per 100,000, Hispanics 446 per 100,000, whites 292 per 100,000, and then other. And so what you have to kind of ask yourself is you have to go, okay, we can see that these numbers are actually higher. And so the discussion, I think, needs to be had. I mean, if you're looking at these numbers, you either have to make a couple assumptions, right? You have to assume that blacks, Native Americans, and Hispanics are more prone to get in trouble, or they are, let's see, what were they called coming over the border? Rapists and...
rapists, murderers.
And thugs.
And drug dealers.
Something like that. Yeah, drug dealers.
Drug dealers and thugs. Or you have to look at the system and wonder if there's some type of judicial bias that's built into the system. And there's a ton of articles that are written about, how that you take a white person in XYZ situation and you take a black person in the same XYZ situation, and 9 times out of 10, the black person is going to get sentenced harder and is going to serve time where maybe the white person won't. And that's actually not going to be what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to actually be talking about the bail system. And so we've already talked about how most of the people that are sitting in the jails right now have actually not even been convicted of any crime. They haven't even had charges brought against them. What ends up happening is they go through and they get picked up and then they get put in a jail cell and they can't make bond. And so as the police, who was the gentleman? He was, maybe you know the name, Stormy. He was a black gentleman, and he was held, this is just recent too, he was held in jail for a total of 3 years without ever being convicted, is
this the kid who killed himself? He was a young...
Yes, in the back seat. Yeah.
Yeah, in New York, and he was in Rikers. I don't remember his name, but yeah, he was in Rikers. It was the same kid. And then once he got out, he just, you know what I mean? Because he was young, and just the mental damage, he ended up committing suicide.
Right. And so he sat in there for 3.5 years, never being convicted of a crime. So let's step back and now let's look, we talked about on our last episode, reparations. And when I, at the very end of that episode, I went through a financial generational plan of just an example of how all of these aspects can actually touch the lives of non-white people. So now let's take a situation where you've been picked up for some type of crime and you're in jail and a minimum bond is $10,000. Okay, and we're going to get to talking about income here in a second. It's $10,000. But if you can't make bail, then you are in there until they either decide to let you go or they charge you with something, and you wait and you wait and you wait. Well, while you're in there, we already talked about in episode number 60 with the profitability prisons. We already talked about how a lot of the third-party groups, the ancillary products like the phone calls and the commissary and a variety of different exploitative merchants take advantage of the people who are in the prison systems, and as well as their family members that are outside. And then you take a person who could be a primary breadwinner of a family. This could be a woman or a man that is incarcerated for, even if it's 2 months, even if it's a month, your job is not going to wait around for a month. Also, you have to be really specific. Even if you didn't necessarily do anything, if your job finds out that you've been sitting in jail for a month, what are the chances that they're going to feel comfortable bringing you back as an employee? Probably slim to none. And so when we're looking at people who are sitting in the jail cells for various amounts of time that haven't actually been charged with anything, you're taking them out of being productive for the family. You're taking them out of earning money. And when you do that, just as we talked about the contract buying in the last episode about how due to the fact that they were unfavorable conditions, that people had to work harder and work multiple jobs to be able to support the housing. So this is the same situation here. If you have that going on and then you take one of the key members out of the family and they're sitting in jail indefinitely until they're decided to be let go or not, then that is going to roll into the economics of the family, and that is going to be like dropping a pebble in a pond, and everything is going to ripple out. And so we have a ton of people that is sitting in jail that have not been, they're considered constitutionally innocent until proven guilty. But really, that's only if you can make bail. So if you're a person who's well off and you can go to a bail bondsman, or you have family members who can go to a bail bondsman and who can put up, a minimum of $10,000 bail bond in order to get you out, then they do. If not, you just sit in there. And you're in that environment, and you're in there for as long as it takes your court date to happen, or you're in there until they decide to release you. And so what we see is, since we've already talked about a lot about the economics of discrimination specifically towards Black people, we see it come back through the prison system, because not only are you talking about a disenfranchised race of people who do not have the ability as on a level playing field to be able to have a savings account and have all these other things set aside, as all the reasons why we've talked about. Now what you do is you put them into a prison system, and people fuck up, okay? You put them into a prison system where they're not able to make bail. And this is what is driving jail growth, is this legally innocent people who are being held, and the fact that there is no reform really going on in the prison system for people who actually haven't been charged with anything. And so when we're looking at data and we're looking at people who are actually incarcerated and waiting to be convicted and people who aren't, we see a very big discrepancy in economics come in. And so in like 2015 data, the median income for a person that was in jail prior to incarceration was $15,109, and that is less than 48% of the median income of non-incarcerated counterparts. So what we see is people who are technically at poverty and or below the poverty level going into the jailing system for a variety of different things. Maybe it's drunken disorderly conduct, or any case. They can't make bail. They can't get out. They can't earn money. And then what we end up seeing is that they sit there, and we see this median income issue come back and back and back. So when we're looking at Black men, we're looking at, of the ones who are in jail or prior to incarceration before they get hauled in on something, we're looking at about $11,275 annual income, which is below poverty level. And we're looking at Black women at making $9,083 annually, and they are considered below poverty level. If we're looking at Hispanics men are typically making $17,449 before, which is barely over poverty, but before they are incarcerated. And Hispanic women are below poverty, making $12,178 a year. And then we have the white men come in, who are the highest earners, at $18,283, and this is prior to incarceration, and the women at $12,954. And what we end up seeing is that with a minimum bail bond of $10,000 being set, if you have a person who has a very low income who is riding right on the poverty line, a $10,000 bail bond can represent 8 months of their income. And in the numbers that we just looked at, if we're looking at a pre-incarceration Black person whose median income is $11,275 annually, and you have them set up at a bail bond at $10,000, you know that there's no fucking way that they're going to be able to make that bond. And so it comes down to a system where either you can pay to get the hell out, or you end up staying in there. And even if you come out, even if they hold you for a number of months, and you come out and you were never charged with anything, I seriously doubt that you're going to be able to go back to your employer and go, hey, they held me in jail for 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, and then they let me out without any charging. So while you don't have any type of specific felony on your record, it's very slim that the employer is going to trust you enough to take you back, because I think that the belief is that we want to trust the judicial system, and that we feel that people who are on jail deserve to be in jail. And so that's kind of a stigma that follows them. And we see just this big disparity between the races in response to how the judicial system actually takes them, and what we start to see that's developed. And one of the things that people have been trying to rail against is the fact that, you can't, when we broke apart from England, one of the things that we had in the Constitution was basically no paupers prisons. Like, you can't throw people in jail for being poor or throw people in jail for having massive amounts of debt. Tax fraud is something different, okay? Owing taxes is not illegal. Tax fraud is illegal. Those are two different things. But through the judicial system and this bail system that we have set in place for people who are nonviolent, who can't make bail, or maybe they've actually just forgotten a court case, because the judicial system is very hard to navigate. If you have a public defender, they're overloaded with cases in every state that you go to, and we know that. And if you have a situation like that where they might miss a court case, then they get issued a bench warrant. And then if they get picked up, they just sit in jail indefinitely until something happens. And so what we see is a start skewing of, even though you can't put people in jail for being poor, that's kind of exactly what happens is because they are not in a situation that they can make this minimum bail to get out and to go back to work and to support their family. And so I know that there's been a lot of conversation lately as far as, with Black Lives Matter, and a lot of statistics that have been coming out, and a lot of attention that's been drawn to just the lopsidedness of the non-white races in jail versus the white races in jail. But I'm more focused on how all of these other things that we've talked about through this series, and we've talked about in episode 60, and we talked about in our Being Black in America episode on number 139, that you can start seeing how all of this stuff just starts kind of building up on top of each other. And I don't know enough about the judicial system to have any, I guess, constructive feedback,
I know in Florida, if you go through the judicial system, even if the electorate elect that after you get out of jail, you should be able to regain your rights to vote. Well, they got them. I know I was totally off topic, but it's something that I've been following. Have you been following that?
No, but that's one of the things that we didn't actually talk about on
Double Jeopardy.
Yeah, and we didn't actually talk about on this podcast, and that brings up a good point, because there has been, especially with the legalization of marijuana, there's been a lot of states that have expunged their marijuana convictions, and some of those people have been given back their rights to actually vote. And there's this whole big stink about whether that's appropriate.
Well, it seems weird. If I served my time, if I got a sentence, I served my time. You know what I mean? I'm just thinking, it's like, if that's your sentence, right, and you served your sentence, it seems like it should be over. You know what I mean? Unless your sentence was, hey, listen, in certain things, if you kill someone, there's certain things where it's known that you lose your right to vote. But let's say if I was booked for a minor offense in certain states, and I don't know if you knew this, but this started in the Jim Crow era. Do you know the background of this?
I don't.
Let me share it with you. So starting the Jim Crow era, here's what they would do. Because once, the way you were able to keep black people from voting was, let's arrest them on some stupid misdemeanor crime. And then if we do that, then what happens is we take away their rights to vote if you're ever arrested. So, hey, you're loitering, we're going to arrest you. Now you can never vote again. So this way it keeps, keeps our people
in check,
in power.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida kept those same Jim Crow laws. I think everyone else in the South has basically gotten rid of them, but Florida kept them. If you were in jail, you lose your right to vote. So they, everyone, it's not fair. It's not right. It's double jeopardy. So it went to the public to vote on this matter. And it was overwhelming. It was a blowout. Overwhelming of the populace said, let's get rid of this. That's some Jim Crow bullshit. So the legislature, just this year, they went and changed. They did some funny business where they're like, okay, but now you have to pay like all the penalties involved of you got to pay your penalties in order to get your rights to vote again. Well, they had these arbitrary numbers because they never kept track of them. But for budgetary constraints, they said, okay, if someone goes to jail for, let's say, larceny, we put a $15,000 fee, and if they get arrested for drugs, we put a $10,000 fee. So for accounting purposes, they just had these arbitrary numbers that they would associate with it. So now what they did in some backdoor dealings were to keep the people who were in jail from voting this particular electorate, because they don't want them voting because they feel that most of them would vote for Biden versus Trump. And it is a Republican legislator that are in place, and the governor, they went and did some backdoor dealings to repeal the law that the people of the state voted for. So now they have it where if you were in jail, you've got to pay these arbitrary fees and fines to get your rights to vote again. Now, it's being challenged in the court, but they were able to get that back. And now that's in place right now, unless the court says that's some bullshit. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's what they did. And it's to keep, it's stupid, but that's what's going on right now in Florida.
Well, and that's like I said, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when you look at that from an economic standpoint, if the person is a nonviolent offender and they've served their time and they've gotten released, and it's already going to be hard enough for them to find a job and to get back on their feet economically, and the fact that we can take this to parallel this to a way that maybe people will more understand when we're talking about women in the workforce. And one of the things is that historically, when there is children that are born, the women step out of the workforce or they cut their hours down so that they can do most of the child care, and the husband continues to go to work. Well, what happens is that the women don't have the continued experience in the workforce. They don't get to maybe pick up more difficult, higher level skill levels. They're also not as visible because now they are focused on the family. And so then what we see is when we see the housewives or homemakers coming out of it when their kids are finally old enough, they're finding themselves in a job market that quite frankly has left them behind. And it's because they have dropped out of the workforce in order to be able to help, do the child care and things of that nature. So if you have somebody who spent time in jail for however long they have for a misdemeanor, 3 to 5 years, whatever it is, then they're coming out of that. And then now they're trying to find work, which is going to be harder because they have a record. And it's going to affect their car insurance. And we talked about big data. There's a whole bunch of stuff that it's going to ripple through where it's not like you didn't serve your time and come out. Now you can't get a job. And now you're also have been removed from the workforce for a certain amount of time. And now just to get your right back to vote, you have to fucking pay $15,000. That just seems like that is illegal as fuck.
It is. It's double jeopardy. I served my time. Why do I got to pay to get my right to vote back? It's a scam.
Well, and there's the whole big, and I don't want to get off topic too much, but there's this whole big bullshit about mail-in voting and absentee ballots. The military votes that way. The president votes that way.
That's a bunch of BS that they just made up out of thin air. Wait a second. I can get my paychecks in the mail. I get my Social Security card in the mail. Hell, I got my passport in the mail. Every government ID, every government issuance of whatever happens in the mail. There's been no proven, the mail-in voting system. There's been no, and believe me, they've been looking for it. They've been looking for mail or fraud. If you remember when Trump got voted, he put, I think it was Kobach, he was somebody in Kansas or something. He made this voting task force that were looking for voter fraud in mail. They couldn't find shit. So now they're like, hey, this is bad. And it's just bullshit. And people eat it up. They're like, oh, they just eat it up and it's bullshit. So many, just look at the numbers and the facts. The facts don't exist. It's kind of like same bullshit that, hey, you don't need to wear a face mask. I saw this meme. It was kind of sad. Herman Cain, right?
Right. Oh, right. I can't believe that.
But let me tell you what the meme was on Facebook. And I'm like, ooh, it was sad. But Herman Cain said, there ain't no coronavirus on the first picture. And it showed a picture of Herman Cain. The next one had the coronavirus saying, there ain't no Herman Cain.
Oh.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I was like, ouch.
Well,
because, but it's a shame that they got people believing that we've turned, the safety stuff into a political issue. And now, voting, there's been a history in our country of let's repress the vote. And I think politics can't get right until everyone's voting, and they can get rid of, because right now, you know what, if I know a certain electorate's not going to vote, or if they don't affect me, well, then I can do the bullshit that's happening now. And that's really more of gerrymandering. So we won't get gerrymandering, but we won't get into that. But yeah, let's make it hard for for a certain group to not vote.
Absolutely. And tax refunds come in the mail. All of our tax forms also come in the mail. Yeah. And the thing is that I think that in that documentary 13, they pointed it out that Democrats and Republicans, neither one of them want to be perceived as being light on crime or light on punishment. And so what happens is we see things like mandatory sentencings come out. And then when we have an actual conversation about saying, hey, this person had a nonviolent drug offense and they've served their time and now they're a productive member of society and they're paying their taxes, we want to give them back their right to vote. It's perceived as somehow that you're being soft to them. But like we've said, then it's just this perpetual cycle of you can never get out of it. And then the whole point about, hey, I served my time doesn't exist. So you're not sentencing somebody for 3 to 5 years for a misdemeanor. You're sentencing them for a lifetime of economic struggles, which will be felt generation after generation after generation. And that's what we were trying to do with this series, is we're trying to pull a lot of the different economical statistic stuff that we see, and we're trying to paint a picture for you guys so that you can understand that when you see somebody and they have a misdemeanor on their thing, and maybe they're, in your opinion, lazy, or they haven't gotten far ahead as you think they should have, or whatever, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going under the current that is happening that we don't even realize. And I knew that the bail issue was hard for some people, but I did not have the knowledge nor the understanding that most of the people who, before they were incarcerated, were at poverty level or below, and that puts it into a different spectrum. I mean, a middle class person, if you were to get, thrown in jail and have to make bail, somebody might put up a car, they might put up a house, or they might, put up, scrape and get all the money together enough to be able to make bail bond. But if you're looking at most of the people that are going into jail that are already at poverty or below, then I don't really know how you can look at a $10,000 bond for a non-violent crime and not see how that is not specifically geared at poor people. And like we talked on the last episode, this is white poor people too, guys. This is class system shit. This is not just blacks. This is poor whites. This is, it affects all of it. And that just kind of blew my mind.
And I just want to say that although I'm an attorney, I've never practiced in the criminal field, but throughout my legal education and training, it was clear that obviously it starts before the judicial system with the police and the biases that are held there. And as Stormy has said in other podcasts, when he was in a car full of white friends and when he was in a car full of black friends, we know which car was the one that was going to get stopped. So, you're more likely to be even arrested on suspicion of offences if you're a minority than you are if you're white. So you're more likely to end up being arrested on suspicion of something and ending up in jail rather than prison because of biases, and then end up in the judicial system, rightly or wrongly.
Right.
And then
so it starts from the beginning, let alone when you get, by the time you get into the judicial process and the system.
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up because, if I go back to it, I was a rebel rouser as a youngster, and but
nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed, I guess. But
his balls look better.
When I was in the car with my black friends, there were numerous occasions, more often than not, where we're asked to get out the car. We sit on the curb. There's an officer standing there with us sitting on the curb. And, we're kids. They're like, can we search in your car? Well, I'm a kid. I'm like, yeah, go look for whatever. And I wasn't doing anything wrong anyway. That's what they would do. That was the issue. I don't remember not one instance, even when I got caught with a fire hydrant spraying people on the side of the road during Halloween with my, buddies that were white. There wasn't a single instance where we were asked to get out of the car or asked to search the car. It was a different experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the biases are there. I mean, if you have, if you're a snake handler, you're going to be way more prone to getting a snake bite than somebody who just kind of walks by one. So if the judicial system is designed like with the stop and frisk, and I'll be honest with you, when I first heard about stop and frisk, I didn't think it was a bad idea until they said that statistically the people they were targeting were non-whites. And then I thought, okay, well, that's not the spirit of the law, right? That's not what the law was designed for. And then I changed my mind on how I felt about stop and frisk. So if you take, a sampling of people, but out of those people, 70% of them are non-white, and you're hitting this sample of people, you're going to, by default, find more things to pull in the people that are non-whites. And then if you put them in the system and they have this issue, whether they get charged with a misdemeanor in this case or not, once they get out, now what you've done is that they still have to go back through and either make up for the lost time that they lost. It's like I said, it's just constantly putting them behind, just all over again, back on the hamster wheel. And, if they were below poverty level before and they were taken out of their family is 9 times out of 10 in a much worse spot. And it would be probable, I would assume, that if they could not find a job, that they would be more likely to reoffend. If
they've done anything in the first place.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we had the same policy, I think, back in the 80s or 90s in England. I think it was called stop and search or something rather than stop and frisk. And exactly the same biases came to pass. And there's lots of studies on, if they're stopping more blacks and minorities than whites, of course they're going to find, say, for example, drugs. They're going to find more drugs on black people because they're stopping more black people. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of reasons why it's going to skew the statistics. Mm-hmm. So it's an awful policy, and it all just compounds itself to a system that is not fair.
Yep.
And I think out of doing this series and doing so much of the financial research that I've done, one of the things that I've been slowly dismantling in my head, and I mentioned this in passing on the episode 139, the Being Black in America episode. My grandparents were wonderful people to me. They were very loving. I had a wonderful storybook childhood, but they were racist and sometimes prejudiced, but racist. And they did have an underlying belief that black people, and specifically, were lazy. And I think that had somebody either explained this to them, or had they had some separation and they just looked at the numbers and they just looked at the systemic things that are built into the system, I think that, I never would have changed their mind overall, but I think that they maybe would have seen that it's not necessarily that they're lazy, because if you're looking at them like, we're here and you're there, well, that must mean that I'm working harder than you, thus you're lazy, thus your race is lazy. In the fact that, no, they're working just as hard, but they're swimming against a harder current. And so there's a lot of odd piece that's come out of this for me, and specifically. And there's a lot of things that I heard growing up that, quite frankly, for a long time I believed as a little kid, because that's your parents, right? So when they say stuff, you just believe that what they're saying is true. And I wish before they passed, they would have kind of known about this. I think that it would have broadened the conversation. And I hope that this series has done that for you guys, because it definitely has for me. Anything to? You're muted, Zoe.
No.
There it goes.
Right. I muted myself because one of my children was screaming.
I know, I heard him.
And shouting, and I forgot. I was going to say, and that's one of the things that you can do is continue to educate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope you guys enjoyed this series. Like I said, the next episode we're going to be rounding it out with protest songs. We're going to be talking about Rage Against the Machine and Public Enemy, among others. And so we'll kind of end this on a high note. I encourage you guys to click on the resources that we have on the different articles and the different statistics that are posted, so you can come to your own conclusions and you can see where I got a lot of this information. And we will see you back next week to round out the series. Follow us on at Finances, the Other F Word. Stormy's book, The World's Best Buyer Persona System, is on Amazon. Finances, the Other F Word, Another F Word to Love, is on Amazon as well. And of course, follow Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram. And you can't see it, but I have my adorable puppy in my lap right now, and she's so cute with her neck roll. And so I'm trying to wrap up this episode, but she's like, but she's being super adorable. So, and I know a lot of our episodes have been getting uploaded late, and like I said, we meaning I have been experiencing technical issues, which I hope to be resolved, and we get back on track following next week. So thank you for tuning in, and we appreciate it, and we'll talk at you soon.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening. For outtakes and photos from each episode, please check out financestheotherfword.com.